Welcome back to Real Talk with Closer Control, the show where we sit down with real investors, doing real deals, and talk about what's actually happening in the market. So it's just honest stories, smart systems, and the wins and losses that actually shape the journey. Today, I'm joined by Alon Daniels, an investor who's been making serious moves in the wholesale as well as real estate space. So if you guys are ready, let's get right into it. Alon, thank you so much for being here with us for the show today. If possible, can you give us a small introduction about yourself, what do you do, and a little bit about your real estate business?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, pleasure to be here and be able to speak. So I've been in the wholesaling real estate space for about 2.5 years now. I do it virtually and I do it nationwide. So that's a little bit different than what a lot of people do in their, local markets. And that's pretty much it. I mean, in the past, I would say a few months, I've really grown my business. Obviously, I've started to use Closer Control a few months back. I think I've been on it for about maybe 5 to 6 months. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction, Alon. What markets are you currently working in right now? Any particular areas which you focus on more?
So that's an interesting question. Started out working in St. Louis, Missouri. Then I went more into the nationwide model. And now I actually partnered up with somebody, his name is Daniel Keanu. He's big in the real estate space. And we're going heavy into the Orlando, Florida market. So there's been a lot of changes. Instead, what I'm doing right now is I have one arm of my business is still the nationwide. I'm still doing that. And another arm is going into Orlando, Florida. I'm going really deep into that market. A little bit of everything.
Got it. So, that's great to hear. Obviously, that's because you've been in the market for a long time. So obviously, sticking to one location is not just enough. And what would you say is one of the biggest strengths you're seeing in the market right now, which is different from last year? Do you feel like it's more of a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market?
What's interesting is doing it nationwide is that there's no one answer. So what's really interesting is that every different market has different trends. So for example, in Florida and Texas, the market is shifting very much towards buyer's market, where in the Midwest, for example, it still might very well be a seller's market. So, and that has a lot to do, with interest rates, with insurance, with values of homes going up and down. There are some markets where there's so many people who bought their house a couple of years ago, and let's say Florida or Texas, and they had a tornado or a flood. Their house was flooded. Everybody wants to sell, but they don't have equity in their home. So that's very, very common recently with Texas and Florida. That said, if you go to Ohio, Missouri, these kind of areas, everything is pretty much the same, and there's nothing too crazy going on with these markets. So, you still get the same leads and there's a lot of opportunity there. That said, you can, there's opportunity everywhere. It's just about, being able to, and knowing if there's another exit strategy you can use that, wouldn't really work in one market, but might work in another market, then that might be, the best way to go in a specific market where things have changed. So definitely interesting. So,
and what would you say is the biggest opportunity right now in the real estate investing space?
Biggest opportunity, I would say novations. I think novations is really starting to pick up, and it's a really, really interesting strategy when it comes to investing. Beautiful thing about it is that you can make a deal out of a lot of opportunities that wouldn't have been a deal otherwise. For example, cash. And not only make them a deal, but make them a big deal. So with novations, you can easily get $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 of profit, where, if you're wholesaling, it's a little bit tougher. And the beautiful thing about it, you can do it nationwide. The nice thing about novations is that you don't really have to know a market that well, because you're not doing the dispo. Whoever doesn't know what novations are, it's where you sign a purchase agreement with a homeowner and you're not buying the house. And you're also not assigning the contract to a different buyer or a different investor, like what would be an assignment or a wholesale deal. What you do is you take that contract and you have the ability to put it on the open market with a real estate agent, so on the MLS. And the buyers that you get, the buyer pool is so much bigger. It's because it's the open market. And a lot of times these are going to be traditional buyers. People are going to live in the house.
Yeah.
So people can get financing from banks, FHA loans, whatever. These are now potential buyers of yours. And you're still making the difference between the buy price and the sell from the end buyer and the price that you and the homeowner have agreed on. What does that mean? That means that your dispo or you selling the home after you get under contract is being done by the agent. So that's their market. That's where they live. That's where they, that's their business. And you only pay them, 3%, 6%, and they're doing all of that side of the work for you. So that's what's really interesting about novations.
Thanks so much for the breakdown, Alon. Do you have any particular system which you have in place other than closer control, which you use for lead follow-up, or do you rely solely on closer control?
I only use closer control as my CRM and for my follow-ups.
Okay, that's great. How would you say your experience is using it?
I would say closer control is probably the best go high level or one of the best go high level build outs I've seen. My favorite part about it is the support, the fact that you have a support team, one text away. You don't have to go to a website and submit a form. You can just send a text and the response is super quick. So that's amazing. And that said, the automations are super useful. You can do anything you want. You can really tailor it to your specific needs. That's really huge when it comes to, running a business, because you can automate a lot of stuff. So you can keep focused on what's actually making money and be more productive with your time, and making sure that you're on top of all of your leads, especially when you have a lot of leads. Me personally, I have a big lead flow in my business. Being able to keep track of all of that is a difficult task. So being able to have a system that helps you not lose opportunity and keep everything in place and make sure everything is being followed up on is just, it's just money. It really is just money. So that's what's really cool about it.
I mean, that's cool, Alon. If possible, can you share us maybe one of the most recent success deals which you have done, or maybe you had a breakthrough?
Sure. So about a month or two ago, we closed a $38,000 assignment. What's interesting about this one is that it came from one of the text automations in Closer, from Closer controlling the CRM. So this was a lead that we haven't talked to in a couple months. He just kept getting automated texts from us. And one day he just responded and we got him under contract, and that turned out to be a really big deal. So that was a pretty awesome situation. The sad thing about it, though, that the guy was dying. So it was quite a sad situation. And we found out that just a few days after we closed on the deal, he actually passed away. So that was a pretty sad story, but hopefully, we were at least able to take a little bit off their plate by buying their home. That's at least what I hope we've been able to do.
One last question before we end the show. What's the one piece of advice, Alon, you could give out to new investors who are starting out in this space, who want to get into the real estate business?
My biggest advice would be, and it's really just one word, that word is leverage. Everybody has their own abilities. Everybody has their own weaknesses or, limitations. So what I would say is leverage other people's resources to get you quicker, to get you moving quicker. So if you don't have time, leverage other people's time. Maybe you have money, use that money to leverage other people's time. You don't have money, but you have time, leverage other people's money, maybe get them to buy you leads and you have the time to call them, for example. Mm-hmm. Leverage other people's knowledge, have somebody help you close deals, lock things up under contract, run numbers on deals, give them a percentage, team up with people. I think when you do it alone, especially at the start, you just don't know what you don't know. And that's what's really a lot of times can hold people back, for months, if not years. And there's really no reason to do that. I think just being able to gain knowledge as soon as, as fast as you can is really huge. If you have somebody in your circle that you can leverage, if you don't, find a circle which does have that. Go into, get into a community, go into Facebook groups, just be active, meet people. You'll find it. I promise you, it's not that difficult to do. So, my biggest piece of advice, just use leverage.
Thank you so much for that advice, Alon. So that's it for today's show. So here we have Alon, where he talks about his experiences as well as his biggest life lesson on how to enter the real estate market and what to look out for as well. Tune in next week, where we'll be jumping with a new investor, sharing a new update as well as new stories. And thank you so much, Alon, for being here with us today and sharing more about your experiences.